This is the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour. Kane, Pitman and Olgun Uluc coming to you just moments after the Opals deliver one of the grittiest, one of the toughest wins you could possibly imagine against the France team in front of 27,000 home fans that were absolutely raucous and going berserk for the entire 40 minutes. And Olgun, we've discussed this Opals team, what the last week has looked like, and that performance, that fight back, that toughness, I don't think we could have possibly imagined that was a performance you were going to see only a few days ago after what the team called an embarrassing loss to Nigeria.
Yeah, all hope seemed sort of lost after that Nigeria game. And it wasn't because of the outcome, but it wasn't just disappointing, it was concerning, right? All of the indicators were really, really scary. And then a win over Canada was pretty good, but I didn't think that they'd get it over the line against a French team that I think was favored to beat them and in front of, like you said, 27,000 people. But this was as good a performance as you're going to see, I think, on both ends from a lot of these girls. And I can't say enough about Tess Madgen and how much she stepped up, the captain stepping up when it mattered most, hit shot after shot. Every shot seemed so important. And not only did they get the win, but they got that win by more than 6 points, so they got second place. And so that was really important when it came to the seedings for these quarterfinals.
It was, and you talk about the end of game and the execution and perhaps some things that didn't go quite well against Canada a few days ago and what that means for point differential and where that places you in the group. And to get the 7-point margin, it means that they avoid the USA in a potential quarterfinal matchup. The draw has just been done, so they will play Serbia. So I mentioned this to you. We're a little concerned about the Australian and the Serbian crowds that are going to be in Paris because they're going to have back-to-back days of quarterfinal basketball, the Boomers and the Opals. The good news is that game is a 7 p.m. tip-off on Wednesday night for the Opals and Serbia. So perfect for everyone at home in Australia to get stuck into this one. Tess Madgen, now tell me if I'm just a little bit caught up in the moment right now, Olgs, because I just did the post-game social reaction, did the post-game report for Nothing But Net on ESPN. And I compared this performance, and not the same in the legendary story, not the same in the box score stats, but when you need...
I know what you're going to say too. Are you going to say Patty?
No, I'm not. I'm sticking with the Opals theme, because when you need a leader to deliver, when your back's against the wall, when you're gonna fall over and not get where people expect you to be, and for this Opals team it was a medal, and if you don't get out of the group stage it's an absolute disaster. You need your leaders to step up in the moment, and I might be getting a little bit carried away, and I'm not saying they're on par, I'm not saying they're even, but I'm saying that I've been fortunate enough to be at both of these games, and I will walk away remembering the performance of Lauren Jackson in the bronze medal game. I'll never forget that. That is, I said, I'm not saying they're on par, but I will never forget this performance from Tess Madgen as well, because of the atmosphere, because of the struggles this team has had, because they lack three-point shooting, and Tess hit 4 of them out of the team's 6, and every single one of them came in an important moment. This is an unbelievable individual performance by a leader when the team needed it desperately.
I see the parallels, right? LJ 2022 wasn't the sort of go-to player in that entire tournament, but when the team needed her most, she stepped up. In this one, I don't think Tess Madgen was expected to be a crazy prominent player for this team.
No.
But with someone like Jade Melbourne still finding her form at this sort of level, and just this team needing some more ball handlers, some more girls who can come on and just hit shots to do something on the perimeter, Tess Madgen stepped up, and it felt like every single three that she hit was at an important time. It felt as though France was maybe getting some momentum. She came in, hit a 3. She stopped that. It looked like Australia was maybe jumping out to a decent lead. She'd hit a 3, jump that out even more. So she was hitting 3s off the catch. She was coming off on balls that were going under him. She was hitting 3s. So again, the captain stepped up, and we spoke about this, after that Canada game of the veterans on this team really stepping up when it matters. And Sandy Brondella really, really leaning on the experienced people on this team, and it was that again tonight.
I'm not going to mention names because we aren't ageist on this podcast, Olgun, but there were several stages when the Opals were battling, and again, there was times in the second quarter where France took a lead, and it's like, okay, now it looks like the Opals are right up against it. Third quarter, they closed the gap a few times. They took 3-point leads on multiple occasions, and then the Opals went on the big run. Australia has an 11-point lead, 61-50 early in the fourth quarter. And that was the first time when I'm like, I think they might just go ahead and win this game. And then when France closes to 1, it's like, now I don't think they can win this game because this building's about to explode. And they did, with regularity, go to the plus 30-year-olds lineups that they have the potential of going. Now, again, I'm not mentioning names here. And as a nearing my mid-30s-year-old man, I respect it. They're our peers. Well, they're my peers. You're a little bit younger than me. But I asked Sandy about the fact that you lean on the veterans, and she kind of said, well, I kind of had to. Those are the girls on the night that were delivering. And that third quarter stretch when they did make their move, we were texting back and forth. One of the younger players that feels like a veteran in this team, I thought for the first time in this tournament, they were able to really use Ezzy McBegor scoring buckets at the rack. And it was because of good facilitation. It was because of good functioning in the half court, which we haven't always seen. But we also saw her block a couple of shots, change a couple of shots, get on the glass and put the ball on the floor. So I still think that there's room for improvement for this team. And that's where the excitement comes from, because I thought it was Ezzy's probably best game, even though not close to what we know she can do over 4 quarters. So Ezzy showing up, then they were able to lean on the veterans. But I thought it was an important stretch and probably the game-winning stretch.
Yeah, so you speak about the offense functioning way better in that third quarter. What was the difference? The first half, the Opals had 10 turnovers, right? A ton of live ball turnovers. Again, it's the thing that has been their Achilles heel over this entire campaign. It's been the Boomers' Achilles heel as well, right? These Australians just can't take care of the ball. That third quarter, the Opals had 0 turnovers in the entire quarter, and it looked like it too. And it meant that they were able to get into their offense, and that's where I think Ezzy was able to find a bit of form, find a bit of rhythm, right? That sort of dipped again in the fourth quarter, but I think it was really important for her to show something, especially on both ends, because she hadn't really found her footing this entire tournament yet. I don't think this team had really been able to get her the ball in the spots that she wanted them. And I put a lot of that down to Sammy Whitcomb over the last 2 games, really stepping up as a ball handler for this team. She's been really, really important. And then Tess Madgen as well. And I think those two, on top of what I think Steph Talbot has been doing over this entire time, as far as ball handling and really being able to move the rock, I think that was a really big part in Ezzy sort of finding her rhythm, and that really bodes well going into this next game.
It was interesting as we continued to watch this game, because you look at points in the paint as I try and look up the numbers here. So 44-32 in favor of Australia. And it was actually more even than I thought it would have been at halftime, because I was noting down just the 3-point attempts that these teams were taking. So Tess Madgen, we already mentioned, knocks down 4 out of the 6. That's critical. I don't think this team has a lot of shooting, but the first attempt from 3 from the Opals came with just over a minute to go in the first quarter, which is insane. And I was trying to figure out what the Opals were doing offensively. You mentioned Sammy. I thought that they were able to find easy baskets in the paint to keep the scoreboard ticking over. They didn't necessarily get to the free throw line a lot, but I thought in terms of the shot selection, and once the second half came and they weren't turning the ball over, it was like, well, we're just going to ram it down your throats. We're going to get it inside. We've got physical guards, but also physical bigs that can get the job done, because it wasn't just Ezzy McBegor, but I thought Alana Smith was really important in that stretch. Now, she missed 3 free throws at a really critical time, which made me very nervous as I was sitting there watching. But there was other times where she was like, I'm just going to put the ball on the floor. I don't think there's anyone that can physically slow me down. So I still think the 3-point shooting is going to be something to watch, and you would love to get a little bit more. But I thought the shot selection was great. Sammy finishes 5 for 7 from the field as well. It all came inside. And ultimately, I think that's where the strength of this team is, stepping up to the physicality, which again, they were dominated in the physical stakes against Nigeria just a few days ago. So they look like they're really easing their way into the tournament.
Yeah, and I thought defensively the Opals looked way better tonight as well. And against a French team that, outside of Japan, this is the team that's going to get up the most threes out of any women's team in this tournament. And I thought the Opals did a really good job making sure that they got a hand to everything. They forced a lot of tough looks. As we were texting back and forth, I pointed out Johannes is such an interesting player. She is so flashy, almost for no reason sometimes. She'll pull off the beautiful pass as much as she'll airball a horribly contested 3. But this is a team that jacks up a lot of threes. I thought the Opals did a really good job getting hands to all of them. Someone I want to shout out, and we shouted her out in that Canada game as well, it's Kayla George. She has seemingly taken all of those sort of backup 5, some of those backup 4 minutes as well. I almost forget, just because she's the backup on this team, that she was the WNBL MVP, 4-time MVP. She was not that long ago too. But her coming on, being someone who can be a bit of a connector offensively, but also just hit shots when it matters. She's in the right spots. She does a good job playing off girls like Sammy Whitcomb and Steph Talbot. I thought she did that well against Canada. She did it again tonight. Almost 25 minutes tonight, I think. If I'm looking at, almost 25 minutes. Like this is the most she's played in this campaign. And honestly, she's becoming a very important part of this team. We thought it could be Lauren Jackson. We saw Mariana Tolo give big minutes against Canada, but Kayla George is a really, really important piece of this team.
Yeah, the 25 minutes is interesting. She was first off the bench today, and I was curious how that was going to look because the last game, obviously, Kayla was huge, Tolo was huge, and they played those big minutes and really soaked up the time because Ezzy was in foul trouble. So I didn't know which way they were going to go. We've also seen Lauren Jackson play minutes through the first 2 games. She was a DMP tonight, along with Christy Wallace. So no LJ minutes. I think it kind of made sense for this game based on the way that the Opals were playing. I don't necessarily think that it means that we won't see LJ again. I suspect we will. If you go back to the Women's World Cup only a few years ago, to the frustration of many at that time, LJ wasn't playing much at all. That was a different schedule, though. Overall, the girls had to play 8 games in 10 days, which is just absurd to even think about. That's not quite the case here. They got days off in between. But I do think in a desperation stakes that they were under tonight, it made sense that Sandy said, look, I'm just going to roll with the people that are hot. They came off a big game only a few days ago against Canada, and Tolo only played 6 minutes, but she scored a couple of buckets, and I still just like the Kayla George, Mariana Tolo combo. You've got a floor spacer, you've got someone that can finish around the basket, so it wasn't a big minutes night for Tolo, but I like the fact that Sandy just rolled with that because you have to go in a short tournament with who has the hot hand. And ultimately, you got 28 plus minutes in this game from Wickham, McBegor, Talbot, and there was one other player, Alana Smith. So you got the big minutes from those guys. Sorry, it was Tess Madgen. So you get the 4 players playing the bulk of the minutes. You share around the rest. I think it made sense. Shorten the rotation. You got 2 days off between games, and it was do or die.
Yeah, and I'd also put those Kayla George minutes down to Alana Smith was in foul trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For some of this game too. So Kayla George is just a better option at the 4 against this France team that does have some sort of agile wings. So I think it makes more sense for her to be out there. What are your thoughts on the Jade Melbourne situation? Because she's the starting point guard for this team. She's still yet to really be. She hasn't been able to put like a solid 3 or 4 minutes of good basketball together. Right, we see glimpses of it. We also see glimpses where other teams know that if they trap her at half court, they can make her struggle. She has looked quite young out there, and her talent is undeniable. Her potential is undeniable, and it's good that there is the insurance of Sammy Whitcomb and Tess Madgen behind her. But what do you think the key is to maybe getting a bit more out of Jade Melbourne? Because again, we know the talent is there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was a little bit curious tonight that Jade is probably playing either that primary or secondary ball handler alongside Sammy Whitcomb, and I do think they lent on Sammy a little bit more tonight as they did in the last game. But being there in person, I tweeted it because I don't know how much you could tell on the TV, but I can't believe the physicality that she was being put through in this game. Like off the ball, they were almost in like full denial of even letting Melbourne touch the ball, which was just fascinating to me because we know that the Opals have had problems with pressure early in this tournament. And I do wonder whether they targeted her for the reasons you talk about, the fact that she's so young, the fact that there has been turnovers. And trust me, it hasn't just been Jade Melbourne, it's been everyone across the board. But I was just fascinated with how physical they played her. So I look at the stat line and it's not impressive tonight, but I also don't think it really hurt the team that much. Like I didn't feel like the Jade Melbourne minutes were bad. I thought that she was fine. I just thought that she was almost getting the Lou Dort, Patty Mills treatment. I mean, she just couldn't do anything. It was interesting tactic, and I'm curious to see what it looks like moving forward. It would be nice because she is someone that can score a little bit, can get downhill. We haven't seen a lot of that to this point. But man, it was physical. I was was shocked by what they were letting them get away with. But at the same time, it felt like France was testing the officials and understanding that you're actually not going to call everything, and they didn't. It was a tough game.
Yeah. The way I just see it as, again, I don't know what the answer is, right? To get more effectiveness out of her. I do know that if the Opals want to be able to progress as far as they can, I think uh, a really effective Jade Melbourne is a way to do that. So being able to get something out of her, just more out of her, right? Again, I think she's fine defensively. She does a good job of pushing the pace at times. I just think in the half court, sometimes she gets stuck, and the physicality, I think, is a big part of that. And again, teams are gonna press up on her. I think they've noticed over those first two games and now this game that that's maybe something that she needs to get better at. And it wouldn't surprise me if Serbia does the same thing and really, upping the pressure, picking up full court on her. I think Sandy Brodella has to do a better job of protecting her. Maybe a terror screen, maybe have like a big that's lateral or something, just to have an outlet for her. Because I get she's being thrown in the deep end here. But yeah, I just think in order for this Opals team to reach its potential, I think they need Jade Melbourne to reach her potential.
Lauren Jackson just really lay out a couple of the opposition, you think, with a big time screen.
I mean, why not? If she's gonna get a DMP, then she's got 5 fouls to use, and she's as much of a veteran as they come in this entire tournament across men's and women's. So she knows how to set a sneaky terror screen. She can get her young girl open.
I remember I asked LJ a couple of years ago about the physicality and the fouls, and yeah, she said from a young age she was told you got 5 fouls. What's the point of wasting them? Which I love that attitude. And as we said, like, they are letting these players get away with a lot out there. Brondello did say after the game, and it kind of does track, but we'll see now. You get to the quarterfinals and it's win or go home. But she kind of pointed to the fact that they actually believe that this is a team that can play physical with any team because they've got size. They've got so many bigs on this roster and tough guards. Like, Sammy Whitcomb is tough. Alana Smith is big, playing at the 4 position. Like, they have size and some versatility there. She said that the WNBA style is so different. She was basically like, you can't touch anyone in the WNBA. You wouldn't get away with this stuff. So she kind of feels like this is a team that was shocked, was just not ready for what they saw in the first game against Nigeria. Got a little bit better against Canada, obviously significantly better against France to withstand all that. So it's hard because when you've only got 3 games, it comes at you quickly and it can be over before you have a chance to correct it. But maybe the 2 days off in between all these games has helped, because it is very visible progression. And walking to the arena tonight, I was like, damn, they played better against Canada, but this is going to be a crazy atmosphere. This is a French team that everyone here thinks, like I said, can get to a gold medal match against America. I knew that they were going to have times where they were coming hard. The momentum was with them. And based on what we'd seen in the first 2 games, I was just highly unsure that we were going to see it. But when you walk away, when you hear that, you hear the players, like, they look like they genuinely enjoyed it. Like, you talk about Jade Melbourne, she had a humongous smile on her face when I asked about the crowd, and she said, I don't really care if they're supporting us or not. If you got 27,000 people, what more could you want? So they seem to be thriving a little bit now. So maybe some of that tracks. This is a team that is building chemistry and working their way into the tournament. And maybe now they can actually be the team that emphasizes that physicality and gets on the front foot.
Building chemistry is, I think, the key, because what was the main theme of that Nigeria game? Outside of the physicality, this Opals team looked like one that just hadn't been together, that hadn't got a ton of reps functioning together. And I think that's what they needed. They just needed time on the floor. And so they progressively got better through that Canada game. They got progressively better through this game too. And that's really all they needed. It was a mixture of just needing reps on the floor together, because a lot of those WNBA girls were not there at camp. And then it's just those girls in the WNBA just had to get used to playing in this style again. You're coming from, again, like you mentioned, that WNBA style to the FIBA style, and whether it's men's or women's, the overwhelming consensus is that it's way more physical. They let a lot more go, and so they just have to get used to everything, playing with each other, playing among this environment. And again, it all bodes well for as you progress. But the key was progressing. The annoying thing would have been if you had found the little bits of improvement and built that chemistry only to miss out because of points differential or something like that. It was good for this team to get to this point, and they have a real opportunity to get to a medal game because they're able to stretch out this lead a little bit, avoid the USA in that quarterfinal matchup. And a win over Serbia is a completely doable result, and getting to a medal game is completely reasonable.
It is. Now, they are on the same side of the bracket as USA for a semi-final. So, look, if they beat Serbia, which they're a live chance to do, as you pointed to, you get USA. That's, I mean,
It's tough.
It doesn't get any tougher than that. But
it's the exact same as the Boomers.
Exactly.
They have a chance of beating Serbia, and if they get to the USA, it's unbelievably tough. They're not favored, but it's not impossible.
And you take that position, that opportunity every day of the week. Last point I've got on the Opals, then we'll just briefly get into the Boomers situation with Serbia, looking ahead to a couple of days' time. I have been fascinated because you talk about the chemistry, you talk about the WNBA stuff, and I've sort of been thinking about this a little bit. And one, it's honest and it's just a fact. Like, this is a brutal situation that the women have to go through. It's really not fair that they're asked to come into a tournament like this when a team has been together for a week. Like, everyone understands that is the worst preparation. But
Sandy's not with them either.
That's right. The head coach. I mean, it's a joke. It's ridiculous. Like, I agree. I think it's complete crap. But I am a little bit surprised how much they talk about it, because you know that you can't. No one wants to hear about it if you lose and you say, "Well, we did," because it's not going to change for the next tournament. It's not going to change for the next Olympics. It's just kind of a lot that you're given. So I'm a little bit surprised that they talk about it as much, because more than anything, I had a concern that if they keep telling us after every game that that's the situation, then it's like they must believe it. They must think that this is too difficult. And I'll worry about the mental side of that. Maybe that's looking into it too much. But I think the honesty of this team is perhaps not what we're used to seeing, because I think a lot of teams wouldn't bring it up as often as they've been willing to.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what that could even come down to, that level of honesty. Maybe I honestly don't know what to put that down to. But the fact that they talk about it, I get it. It makes it sound like an excuse, as much as it might not be, but it makes it sound like it. But it's just the reality of it, though. But maybe that's their coping mechanism in a good way of getting through it, of approaching these situations whenever adversity hits them. They know why they're in these situations. It's because we haven't been together for too long. It's because of this, and this. Maybe if they're able to sort of stare their big issue right in the face and be open talking about it, maybe that's the easiest way to overcome it. That's the only thing I could put that down to. Because again, these girls are way too accomplished, and they're way too good to be using it as an excuse, right? I wouldn't even put it down to that. It just seems like this is the way to overcome adversity is to point it out, right? I guess that's the tack they're going down.
Well, it didn't impact them tonight, and that's the biggest thing. It's not, because again, like I don't think that they would have, if they had a loss tonight, would have come out and said, "Wow, this is why we lost." Like, I don't believe that. Like, I don't think that that's how they actually feel. But just when you talk about it so much, and they clearly do feel like it's a challenge, which it would be. It's just been interesting from a little journo media perspective there. But the Opals win tonight, I said it from the start. That is just an incredibly tough win. We were texting. It was stirring. It was difficult. They could have lost this game in heartbreaking fashion, and you would have understood it. But they dug deep and able to get the win. So a pretty exciting result, I think, for a lot of people in Australia to wake up to. The Boomers on Tuesday against Serbia. What time is that tip off there? 10:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard?
10:30 p.m. I don't have to pull an all-nighter, I don't think. Not this time.
Hey, shout out to you. By the way, it's 1:30 a.m. here in France. So how the turntables...
Hey, man, shout out to you. Out to you. It is 9:30 a.m. I got 8 hours sleep. I had an early wake up, which I'll be okay. But it's hitting 1:30 a.m. for you, and this is the first time that you've had to pull an all-nighter of some sort in this back and forth that we've had. So big congrats to you, and I hope you're doing okay.
I'm doing fine, and I was just at the draw, and a big show and dance, and a couple of bowls with a couple of balls in there, and everyone already really knows the matchups, but they just do it anyway, and it was fantastic display with the quarterfinal draw for the women, and I don't know whether it's acceptable behavior, but I almost cheered. I almost let out a cheer when they said that the Opals and Serbia was the 11 a.m. game on Wednesday. It's what we love. We love the early game. It's good for all time zones, particularly for the fans at home. So that's going to be exciting. The men, you go from Giannis, one of the biggest athletic freaks in the world of basketball. And there you go to another multiple-time MVP, but he plays it differently. Nikola Jokic has gone through stages where he can absolutely tear teams apart. Offensively, if you want to guard him one-on-one and he actually feels like he's in a mood to score, if you send bodies at him, he loves that because he's got eyes in the back of his head. So, look, I'm fascinated. I think this is a very winnable game for the Boomers. I really do. But just the challenge and what type of Nikola Jokic performance you get and what type of mood he's in, I can't wait to see how it pans out. It's really exciting.
And I think it bodes well for this team that the Boomers got a win over Serbia in those exhibition games in Abu Dhabi. At the time, Serbia always plays a little bit relaxed in their warm-up games, but getting that win is important for the mind, right? It's good for the confidence. That game, they didn't have Bogdanovic, and he has been an unbelievable scoring threat. He always is at the FIBA level, but he has been over the last few games, and especially against South Sudan, he was seemingly unstoppable. I agree it's a more palatable matchup. I think it's a better matchup than the Australia-Greece one. I think Australia has the sort of guard and wing play to handle what Serbia has to bring from that perspective. And I think they have the bodies to throw at Jokic. Again, no one's going to stop Nikola Jokic. No one's going to stop him from being the most elite passer in the world. But I think as far as having the bodies just to chuck at him and see what happens, I think Australia is built to do that. And again, I think the guard and wing play is in a really good spot to handle this Serbia team, which does have Vasilij Micic and it does have Bogdan Bogdanovic, and they're a really talented team. But I think from a stylistic standpoint, I think the Boomers are in a fairly decent place.
It'll be interesting because two Atlanta Hawk teammates, Bogdanovic and also Dyson Daniels, I don't know whether that's necessarily going to be the matchup. Typically what we've seen so far, Daniels going to more of the primary ball handler, but you talk about the real offensive threat on the outside. It is Bogdanovic. He can shoot off the dribble a little bit. He will play off the ball. He will be looking to get any type of open three off those Jokic passes. So curious to see whether those two spend any time on each other. I did just publish a story over at espn.com.au a few minutes ago. I've spent just the last week just asking a bunch of Boomers about Dyson Daniels and their responsibility and what they've seen. Also what they were thinking when he went down with that knee injury just a couple of nights ago, because I do think, regardless of how this goes, Daniels is one of the great stories of this tournament. So I'm fascinated about that. I'm fascinated whether there is a decision to be made, whether it's Josh Green or Matthew Dellavedova, based on what we've seen. Again, similar to the Opals, right in the hot hand. So there is a bunch of stuff that I'm fascinated by. And Giddey having a below par game by his lofty standards last time out, you look for a bounce back there as well. So lots of storylines and that are going to carry through from the loss to Greece to now into this one.
I think this is a way better matchup for Giddey going into this one, having Jokic come up and bring him into ball screens as opposed to having Giannis. That is night and day as far as like defensive capacity.
With respect, with all due respect.
With the greatest respect to the person who I still think is the best player in the world right now. Giannis is a far and away orders of magnitude better defender. And I think the size difference as well. I think Giddey has a size advantage over a lot of the Serbian guards and wings, which I didn't think he had over Greece. I thought Greece had really good positional size. And so I just think this is a way better matchup for Josh Giddey to go downhill and attack and really create off on balls and things like that. I'm intrigued at the Patty Mills situation because you talk about Dyson Daniels probably taking Vasilij Micic, right? You imagine he'll pick up full court and take that primary ball handler. Who guards Bogdan Bogdanovic is a legitimate question here. And, you'll have Josh Giddey on somebody. I don't know if you want Josh Giddey on Bogdanovic. And Patty Mills, while he has had some struggles, especially on the defensive end and on the offensive end, he hasn't looked amazing this tournament either. He did have 28 points against Serbia in that exhibition game. And so, this is the type of team that Patty Mills can find his spots in, right? He can create some separation against this sort of team. And so I'm intrigued to see how many minutes we see from Patty Mills if they go with a Josh Green or, like you said, a Matthew Dellavedova, just to add that extra defensive punch with someone like Bogdanovic. This will be Gorgon will need to be on his A game in this one.
Yeah, and that's why I think actually you could go either way. They might try both guys in the first half because we're seeing that a little bit, whether it's Green that can chase Bogdan around or whether you can release Daniels and put Dellavedova on the primary ball handler, whoever it is, whether it is Micic or whatever, then Daniels can shift back. So I think they've got some options. I also am curious whether this is the matchup, and it's challenging when you've got Jokic there. But do we see more of the three ball handler lineups? Dante Exum, obviously another defensive option as well. And do you go small? We haven't seen a lot of it through the tournament so far. So I think that there's lots of options there. And even though we've discussed the rotation a lot, I don't think we're any closer to saying, okay, this is the rotation. I think it will change on a night-to-night basis.
I agree. And I'll keep saying it, and we've said it the whole tournament, live ball turnovers. They've got to cut that out, right? Turnovers, they are what they are. But the live ball ones against the Serbia team, which you know is going to be pretty potent offensively, and which I don't think is going to be amazing defensively. You're going to need to have all the opportunities you can to get shots up against them. And you're not going to you can't let them get easy buckets, because you know that they're going to be able to create easy buckets for themselves, with Jokic creating for them and Bogdanovic being a really elite FIBA scorer. So giving them easy buckets when you know they're going to get them, you can't be doing that.
How good is this, Olgun? We've got another few days of hanging out, maybe another week, because there were times over the last few days where I was thinking, what am I going to do with my last week here? Am I going to go to some
just
handball?
Holidaying in Paris was the potential for you, huh?
I might have been on the Nothing But Shuttlecock podcast. The badminton, or I don't know, the shooting or the cycling. I don't know what I would have been doing. So now we've got 2 more games. We want 2 teams in the semifinals. You get there and you got another 2 games. So all of a sudden, our schedule has gotten a little bit more busy over the next few days. But I mentioned the Boomers in Serbia Tuesday, the Opals in Serbia on Wednesday. It's been rocky to get here, Olgs. But Sandy Brondello said it best. She said, look, now we're going to Paris. We get to check out the Olympic Village. But then she also said it's just 1 box ticked. So maybe not the perfect path so far, but both the teams have ticked 1 box on the way to the quarterfinals. And that's pretty damn exciting.
Kane, I think both head coaches are feeling the exact same thing, which is, all right, we're through. We've got through the group stages. It is now win or go home. We don't have to care about points differential or anything like that. It is the simplest equation from here on out. And I think there's something that's cathartic about that. There's a burden that comes off you once you're through the group stages. Being in a quarterfinal is a great achievement. So the pressure of having to progress very far is sort of off. The pressure of points differential is off. And now it's just go out and win games and see what happens.
All right. We'll be back on this show after the Boomers game. We'll also do a post-game after the Opals as well. So we've got a day off here so you can soak up all the content you need on espn.com.au. On all the social pages, let us know your thoughts. If you jump on YouTube, you can get in the comments section and break down anything from these games that you thought was important, anything we missed along the way. And maybe you're either for or you're against my LJ, Tess Magin, inspirational leader, iconic Opals performance. I don't care if I'm caught up in the moment. I'm sticking with it. Just like I did my camo shirt the other night, which, by the way, I'm going to wear it again. It's a nice.
You got so much flack for that.
It's a nice Zara item. It's very hot over here it's very hot over here in Europe, and it's very comfortable, light, and I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to bring it back in Paris.
You're in Paris. You're in the home of Louis Vuitton and the home of Yves Saint Laurent, and you're out here with a Zara fixture. What are we doing?
Cheap. It's cheaper.
True.
It's a very, very simple answer.
I liked I think Dan Ewing put a little comment on your tweet saying you look like John Cena. So, and I hadn't seen that before, but in that very moment, I couldn't see you, so I understand it.
Yeah, well, that's compared to John Cena, we'll take that. Let's wrap it up. It's 1:39 local time. I'm going to write a story. I need to pack my bags. This hotel room is not looking pretty at the moment. And we're going to jump in the car at about 7:30 a.m. to head to Paris. We'll be back after the Boomers game against Serbia. Hope you enjoyed the content. Kane, Pitman, Olgun, Uluc. We'll speak to you next time.